Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. Tactical route exchange, yes, well, may seem a bit strange to experienced navigators. Why would actually need something like that? And I'll try to start by describing what it is. It's actually two sub-concepts. It's the idea of intended route, by sending my intended route to somebody else for them to see it, and also to have a suggested route where you can actually send a route suggestion from, for instance, VTS to a ship. I'll quickly go through it. The idea of an intended route, as it says, is that I'll be able to make my route available to another vessel, for instance, to see. That doesn't mean the full route or the full voyage, but we can use the voyage plan, which we already have in the ACCSEAS, and make part of that route available to other vessels to see. That means that if I go in and look in my ACCSEAS, I can right-click on a vessel, I can ask to see part of their route. That means that I can see 30 minutes ahead, I can see a couple of waypoints ahead, depending on what's most suitable, depending on the area. If we're going across the Atlantic, you probably wouldn't want to see a number of waypoints ahead. Time is more crucial in that sense. That means that I can see what at least the other vessel is planning to do, which will aid my decision making. That means that I can call them up in VHF and I can ask them, do you still intend to follow your planned route? I don't have to ask them or more intricate questions, so to speak. And well, as you see in the slide here on the photo, you'll see the own vessel and the other vessel. And of course you can do that with as many vessels as you want, but preferably one at a time in order not to clog up the system, so you wouldn't see it. You have an information overload. Route suggestion is slightly different. It's really where I have my base as VTS. It's where a VTS, still depending on using the route made available by a vessel, can suggest a different route to the one that the vessel is intending to take, depending on events in the fairway. For instance, in this case, where we have a congestion outside the intended route, or where the ship is actually intending to sail, and the vessel can actually propose, or the VTS can propose a new route, which is probably or hopefully better to the vessel, which will make the passage more efficient, more safe, etc. So the general idea behind this was to increase situation awareness. So we'll start by just looking quickly at what SA is. Situation awareness was, let's say, invented or described first by Mika Ensley in 1988. She described it as the perception of elements, the comprehension of the meaning, and the projection of what was going to happen with those things in the future. That means the perception that I'm taking in all these things. I hear, I smell, I sense, all these things. But if I don't have comprehension, if I can't make sense out of all that information, and I have all the inputs that I don't have situation awareness. Nor will I have situation awareness, even though I can see what is happening, I can feel it, I can sense it, I can see what is actually going on, I understand what's going on, but I can't project it. I cannot see what these events are going to lead to into the future. So I need that for all those three kind of sub-puzzles in the jigsaw. And our hope, our intention with looking at these services was to see if we can increase situation awareness for the mariner, for the VTS operator, and for other players involved as well. And it was first initiated in the efficiency project, and then it's been augmented in the ACCSEAS project, the Mona Lisa 2 project as well. So we're running a bit parallel here. But then, of course, as you know, situation awareness is only based on one single person. So we have to start by looking at distributed operators. We start by looking at multiple operators. If we look at a bridge, you see the ship bridge in the middle there. You have, for instance, a pilot, you have a master, you have an officer of watch. those three, first of all, have to share situation awareness. And then you have, so that's the team, so to speak. But then you can have a team of teams. You might have people on mooring stations. That means that those have to share situation awareness with the other ones on the bridge. And then extending that team of teams, so to speak, we're looking at the VTS, we're looking at the agent, the linesman on shore, we're looking at the tug operators, for instance. All of these things, they all have to share situation awareness. That makes up the team of teams, so to speak. It might be difficult to understand the idea of teams when you are thinking of yourself as being on a vessel, and that's the team, or the bridge team, for instance. But in an extended purpose, this would be a team of teams, so to speak. Now, as Sensley says, you have to have the degree of shared situation awareness is based on that everyone possesses enough situation awareness for their task, so to speak. If we extend that to looking at team of teams, we actually share only a very small part of our situation awareness. The less overlap with the tasks that we have, the less information we have to share. But if we can assist that sharing of information in any way, we can communicate verbally, we can communicate non-verbally, depending on how we interact with other people. We can interact with text and all those things, and we can use graphical things. Then, of course, we have other means of communication as well. But the more senses you actually apply in that communication, the better it is for the interpretation and the comprehension of the information you're receiving. So that means that we want to explore if we can use other means of communicating and aiding that communication. We've done a number of trials. We based it on the EPD that we've been hearing about previously. The latest trials was in Flensburg and at Chalmers this autumn. We've also done, within 1 lease period, we've done trials in Korea. We used subject matter experts, which were highly experienced. They were pilots, mariners, BTS operators, and we had a number of scenarios, of course, that we've used. In general, I'll just focus on the results that we got. For the intended route, it was very positive, I'd say. If you look at the questions that was asked, what the opinion was, it was generally thought of as a very, very good idea. And whether it was going to be implemented in the future, yes, most of the pilots and the BTS operators and mariners were very certain it was going to be implemented in the future. They were quite happy with what they saw and what they used. And they were so happy that when we were doing simulations in Gothenburg, I experienced listening in to desperate mariners and also VTS operators clicking on the EPD system, which is very much like an ECDIS system, or for instance a VTS system, right-clicking on different vessels and being annoyed that they couldn't see the intended route of another vessel. It took about 3 scenarios, and then first scenario, they were slightly offset. They said, well, we won't need this. We know how to sail ships in our area. Second scenario, well, it could be useful in the future. Third scenario, they actually got annoyed when they couldn't see the information. And that's quite interesting to see how quickly they actually got used to that and how good they actually thought it was. So we had David coming up later on. David, one of the programmers of the EPD, had to assist the navigators and the VTS operators every now and again, and coming in and explaining to them that we haven't actually added any route information to certain vessels, because they really thought it was a technical problem. But we can also see that it did assist communication between vessels, and that was the most important thing. So clearly it did increase the situation awareness, the shared situation awareness between vessels. Looking at the suggested route, similar results. I would say the one having the opinion of it being a very good concept, was one of the VTS operators, then generally it was a good concept, or thought was thought of as a good concept. And of course they foresee the implementation in the future. Now, what happened during the different trials, from hearsay, I wasn't in Flensburg, but there was some reluctance from what I understand, whereas when we did the trials in Gothenburg, we used British pilots and navigators and VTS operators for that instance. And one of the operators, VTS operator, made a very interesting move when he used the system. He first explained to the vessel what he thought would be a better route. Then he said, I'll send you a route suggestion so that you can see what I mean. In that way, he bridged this gap, this feeling that the navigator would otherwise have, the pilot would have, that there was something just jumping onto him. There was something from out of the blue sending a route onto my ACCSEAS. Now, the VTS operator bridged that by saying, I'll send that information to you so you can see what I mean, and suddenly it became a visual tool for communication and aiding that communication. And that's very useful, and it was thought was very useful when we had discussions and debriefings afterwards, because as most of you know, there are quite some language difficulties when we do discuss things with navigators on the HF, for instance. And most navigators, I would argue, are quite well experienced, but then when it comes to language, it can be very, very difficult. So by using this tool, you'd be able to bridge that gap of language difficulty. Just in conclusion, we did see an increased shared situation awareness between vessel, but also vessel VTS, which was very interesting. I would say that to be properly, or to be really, really certain, we should obviously do more trials like this. But I would still argue, somewhat boldly though, that these are two services ready for deployment. And in fact, the updated ACCSEAS standard will include the possibility for ACCSEAS to actually exchange route information. And that will be updated in late 2015, or this year. But I will still argue from a kind of research point of view, I would argue that we, as I said, we need some more proper research, but we also need to understand that this needs to be included in future training on ACCSEAS, so that we don't see radar-assisted accidents or ACCSEAS-assisted accidents in the same way that we saw in the 50s, 60s, so to speak. But on the other hand, November we'll have it on board. So, yeah, we have to move quickly with regard to training. Right. Thank you.